In the world of anime series Psycho-Pass, futuristic Tokyo is ruled by the powerful hive mind known as the Sibyl System. It executes its gargantuan task of governance by regularly measuring the biometrics of its citizens' minds through cymatic brain scans, and in so doing, assigns everyone a psychopath, an actively updated personal profile used to assess everything from career aptitude to romantic compatibility. Each person's psychopath includes a metric known as the crime coefficient, a number that measures one's propensity to commit criminal acts. If this number rises beyond a certain level, the individual becomes a target for law enforcement, which is carried out by inspectors and enforcers, the field agents of the policing force known as the Public Safety Bureau. And although this is probably sounding like a terrifying Orwellian surveillance state right now, most people in Psycho-Pass seem to be fine with it. But perhaps this is simply the result of people having their emotions and wills suppressed by an omnipresent system that has little tolerance for deviance from the norm. One of the things that makes the world of Psycho-Pass so interesting is that it serves as a testing ground where different philosophies and literary texts are pitted against each other in a sort of mixing pot. In this series, we see influences from philosophers like Nietzsche, Rousseau, and Immanuel Kant. We also see many similarities to books like Conrad's Heart of Darkness, Orwell's 1984, and Philip K. Dick's Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? But the society that Sibyl desires to create in Psycho-Pass is perhaps most heavily influenced by the philosophy of Plato, which it outlines in his Socratic dialogue, Republic. In fact, the two are so intimately connected and appear so strikingly similar that if you told me that Urobuchi Gen did not have Plato in mind when writing Psycho-Pass, I would have a very, very hard time believing it. Here are some similarities between Sibyl's society and Plato's ideal society. In Republic, Plato discusses how to realize the just city-state, and he proposes dividing society into three classes. At the bottom of the hierarchy are producers, which includes people of most professions like doctors, merchants, farmers, artists, all fit into this category. And they have no say in ruling. They are merely the ruled. Plato did not seem to have been the biggest fan of democracy. And their job is to focus exclusively on producing what they are most fit to produce, depending on their aptitude. Just like Plato's just city-state, Sibyl also reinforces a static society where every citizen serves a predetermined role. In Psycho-Pass, in fact, each high school graduate is given a list of career choices based on their aptitude, which is also determined by one's psychopath. In both Plato's society and Sibyl's society, each person performs a task given to them and are discouraged from meddling in the work of any other class. Above the producers are the auxiliaries, or warriors. They enforce the ruler's will upon the general population and defend the city from internal and external threats. The Psycho-Pass equivalent is, of course, the agents of the Public Safety Bureau, the inspectors, and the enforcers. These are the shepherds and hounds that carry out Sibyl's will, enforcing criminal justice and maintaining social order, neutralizing any latent criminals that might pose a threat to Sibyl's society. Finally, topping Plato's hierarchy are guardians, philosopher kings who serve as heads of state and are responsible for ruling the city. To be considered for the position of guardian by the current guardians, a person must demonstrate exceptional virtue, possessing traits like wisdom, courage, justice, temperance, and a good memory. But perhaps most importantly, philosopher kings must yearn and seek the truth in all things, and in so doing, become the embodiment of justice. Like Plato, Sibyl is also concerned with establishing a just society. At least, in theory it does. In Psycho-Pass, the role of the philosopher kings is filled by Sibyl itself. One of the greatest reveals in Psycho-Pass is that Sibyl is not really a powerful AI. It is in fact a hive mind constructed from the brains of criminally asymptomatic individuals, people whose psychopathes, like antagonist Makishima Shogo, cannot be determined by Sibyl. Like Plato's system, admittance to the Sibyl hive mind is determined by the hive mind itself. Candidates are screened for an unconventional personality and sense of morality, particularly the ability to render objective judgment on human behavior without being clouded by emotion or empathy. In other words, just like Plato's philosopher kings, one of the distinguishing characteristics of Sibyl candidates is also the rare ability to see the truth in all things. Another interesting notion relevant to Plato's Republic comes in the form of a question. Quis custodiet ipsos custodes, which in Latin is for who will guard the guards themselves. Originally found in the works of Roman satirist Juvenal, this question is still used today to consider how power given to the authorities can be held to account. Would the police become corrupt, for example? Who polices the police? Or the army? Or government officials? And although the actual quote, who will guard the guards themselves, does not show up in Republic, it is heavily implied and drives much of the conversation in the second and third books. Plato's response to the question involves a radical education to promote incorruptibility among the city leaders. Yet in this case, Psycho-Pass has a different, but nonetheless interesting answer. In Sibyl society, there are not one, but two kinds of auxiliaries or policemen, inspectors and enforcers. And to answer Juvenal's question, we must look at the relationship between the two groups. Early episodes of Psycho-Pass establish that although they work together, there is a lot of tension between the two groups. Enforcers are latent criminals, people with high crime coefficients but are given some degree of freedom in exchange for their services as policemen, which involves hunting latent criminals like themselves. Inspectors, on the other hand, are not criminals. They oversee the enforcers and even have to put them down if they step out of line. Because of this, many inspectors view the enforcers they command as expendable hound dogs and are afraid to become too emotionally attached to them as people. And while this may seem cruel, this detachment is in fact a sort of self-imposed protective measure. Inspectors distance themselves from enforcers, while enforcers do much of the dirty work when dealing with latent criminals. Since exposure to criminal behavior risks tainting your own psychopaths, these measures keep the psychopathes of inspectors clean and their crime coefficients low. However, when inspectors do become latent criminals, as in the case of Kogami Shinya, they are simply demoted to enforcers themselves and assigned an inspector to oversee them. In implementing the safety measure, Sibyl in effect places a guard over any guard who it deems incompetent to guard, thus resolving Juvenal's original concern.